Welcome back to Poorly Educated Today in the News, where the headlines move faster than gas prices during a Middle East argument, and somehow everything costs more even when nothing works. Today feels like the world accidentally sat on the remote and hit every crisis button at once. We got war, lawsuits, AI billionaires, airport lines longer than a DMV story, and politicians acting like a family reunion that went on way too long. So grab a drink, grab a seat, and prepare for the news equivalent of a tractor doing donuts in a Walmart parking lot. Segment 1. Oil prices and boom goes the economy. Apparently, the global economy decided to try extreme sports this week because oil prices shot up like somebody told gasoline it could win the lottery. We got conflict involving the United States, Israel, and Iran, pushing energy markets into full panic mode. And suddenly filling your truck feels like financing a small yacht. Brent crude hit levels high enough to make economists start using phrases like structural inflation, which is just fancy talk for everything costs more forever. The wild part is global leaders keep saying everything is under control, which is usually what somebody says right before the grill catches fire at a barbecue. It is amazing how one geopolitical argument can make groceries more expensive in towns that still measure distance in how many cornfields you pass. The scary reality underneath the jokes is energy prices touch everything, from food shipping to manufacturing to that random $12 bag of chips at the airport. Experts say inflation may stay high longer, which basically means interest rates are about as stubborn as a mule that just saw a snake. Markets are bouncing around like a caffeinated squirrel, but somehow tech companies are still worth more than the GDP of countries most of us forgot existed. It really feels like the global economy is duct-taped together by spreadsheets and optimism. When oil spikes this fast, everybody suddenly becomes an expert on pipelines, even that one guy at work who still prints emails. Segment 2. Airport lines and government gridlock. Meanwhile, back home, the Department of Homeland Security funding drama has TSA staffing stretched thinner than gas station coffee. Travelers are reporting wait times so long, people are forming emotional bonds with strangers in line, which is dangerous because that is how pyramid schemes start. Some airports are experiencing delays piling up faster than excuses during tax season, and apparently employees have been working without pay, which is a great way to motivate people to absolutely not care about your luggage. Nothing says confidence in infrastructure like hoping the security line does not become a camping trip. At this point, the TSA might start offering frequent flyer miles just for surviving the line. Underneath the chaos is a serious issue about government funding fights causing real-world disruptions that affect millions of travelers. When agencies run out of money, the consequences are not theoretical. They show up when your flight is delayed 3 hours because nobody is there to run the metal detector. It is wild how political gridlock can shut down something as basic as moving people through airports. Nothing highlights dysfunction like watching lawmakers argue while everyone else removes their shoes in public. The modern travel experience now includes anxiety, dehydration, and wondering why your belt suddenly became a national security threat. Segment 3. Universities, lawsuits, and political food fights. The federal government is now suing Harvard, which is kind of like suing the kid who reminds the teacher about homework, but with more lawyers billing by the hour. The lawsuit revolves around civil rights issues and campus tensions, proving once again that higher education has become the intellectual version of reality television. Universities used to argue about philosophy. Now they argue about federal compliance paperwork thicker than a tractor manual. Every time the government says nobody is above the law, it sounds serious, but also slightly like somebody just got unfriended at Thanksgiving dinner. At this rate, campus orientation will include instructions on how to find the nearest legal defense team. The grounded reality is higher education has become a major battleground for cultural and political conflicts that extend far beyond classrooms. Policies about speech, safety, and discrimination now influence federal funding and legal accountability. When universities and governments clash, the ripple effects influence research, tuition, and the general mood of everyone eating ramen in a dorm room. It feels like academia accidentally became the main character in a political drama nobody asked to binge-watch. College brochures might soon list majors like political fallout management and intro to congressional headaches. Segment 4. AI trillion-dollar flex and software panic. While everything else looks unstable, big tech companies are printing money faster than a yard sale prints regret. Apple, Microsoft, and Nvidia are now valued in the trillions, which is such a ridiculous amount of money that it sounds made up by a kid explaining why he cannot do chores. AI is driving this surge, meaning computers are now so smart, they are threatening the jobs of the people who created the computers, which feels like a sci-fi movie written by an accountant. Meanwhile, traditional software companies are losing value faster than a used truck with 300,000 miles and a mystery noise. Investors are basically saying if your software does not use AI, it might as well run on dial-up internet. The serious observation here is technological disruption is happening faster than companies can adapt, and entire business models are being reevaluated overnight. AI tools are automating complex tasks once thought safe for decades, forcing industries to rethink hiring, productivity, and long-term strategy. The economy now has a weird split personality where some companies grow at warp speed while others shrink like a t-shirt in a hot dryer. The future of work might include collaborating with algorithms that never sleep and never ask for coffee breaks. At this point, the only safe job might be fixing robots after they try to fix themselves. Segment 5. Global power moves and diplomatic chess. International politics this week feels like watching 5 chess games happening at once, except one player flipped the table. Canada is holding snap elections because apparently dealing with the United States now requires campaign promises and possibly emotional support maple syrup. Russia is limiting fertilizer exports, which means food prices could rise because apparently even crops are now part of geopolitical strategy. Countries are maneuvering alliances like neighbors arguing about fence placement, except the fences involve trade routes, satellites, and nuclear submarines. The global stage currently looks less like diplomacy and more like a group chat where everyone misread the tone. The grounded truth is these strategic moves influence supply chains, inflation, and stability in ways that take months to fully appear in everyday life. Trade relationships affect job markets, currency values, and how expensive it becomes to grow food or manufacture products. Even decisions made thousands of miles away can impact the price of groceries or fuel locally. It is strange realizing the cost of bread can depend on a meeting in another hemisphere. The world economy now feels like a complicated farm where everyone shares the same irrigation system, but nobody agrees who controls the valve. Segment 6. Science breakthroughs and weekly insulin hope. Some good news finally showed up, which is rare enough that we should probably frame it. Scientists are making progress studying NAD+ pathways that could slow aging and help treat neurodegenerative diseases, which basically means researchers are trying to make humans less creaky over time. There is also a once-weekly insulin treatment under review that could replace daily injections, which would make managing diabetes significantly easier for millions of people. Medical breakthroughs do not always make loud headlines, but they quietly improve quality of life in ways that matter more than market fluctuations. It is refreshing to see science solving problems instead of creating new passwords. The grounded takeaway is innovation in healthcare continues to produce measurable improvements in longevity and disease management. Incremental improvements in treatment compliance can have massive long-term effects on population health outcomes. Sometimes progress is not flashy. It is simply fewer needles and better days for people managing chronic illness. Science rarely trends on social media, but it quietly keeps extending the timeline of human potential. Honestly, if scientists can make weekly insulin work, maybe next they can invent a pill that prevents politicians from talking in circles. In conclusion, the world currently feels like a blender set to high speed, filled with geopolitics, inflation, lawsuits, artificial intelligence, and occasional good news trying not to spill. Every headline seems connected to another headline, forming one giant complicated web of cause and effect that eventually lands in your wallet or your grocery bill. The modern news cycle is less about isolated stories and more about chain reactions that keep bouncing across industries and borders. If the past week proves anything, it is that global stability is apparently more fragile than a lawn chair at a sumo tournament. Stay informed, stay skeptical, and remember, if everything feels chaotic, it is probably because everything actually is.